not going to make you share that in the chat. Maybe later we can. Let's welcome our very special guest then, Anita. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you being here, because I feel like I know that when you're doing book promo and book launch, it's hectic time. So we appreciate your time very much. Thank you for being here.
No worries. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Well, congratulations on it. I can't wait to dive into it with you. Where are you today? I think you said London, didn't you, to me?
Yeah, I'm in my flat in London. Yeah, just on the sofa, which is my
just
office.
hanging out. This is your office, yeah. So what does a day in your life normally look like? Look, I'd love to know that, just kind of get a kind of idea of when you're not sitting there writing and researching books.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. So I'm freelance, but I've got a couple of regular gigs. One is at Condé Nast Traveller, the other one is at The Guardian, where I'm a columnist on the Saturday magazine. So yeah, there's a lot of furious typing at my laptop. It always makes me laugh. I don't know if anyone else has seen it, but there's that emoji or like that gif of like a cat typing sort of like that on a keyboard, and I feel like that's me basically. Like steam coming out of it. So yeah, lots of typing, but lots of like travel and research, and it's quite a mix. I do a lot of consultancy for brands and sort of sensitivity reading and things like that. So I do quite a mix. So yeah.
Yeah, and how has your journey through media been? So did you have been a beauty editor, solely focusing on that side of things before?
Yeah, I guess sort of career-wise. I always knew I wanted to be a journalist from a really young age. I was one of those like sort of slightly, quite rare people, I think, who knew what they wanted to do very young. But I come from a South Asian family, and there is a definite strict, you're either a doctor or you're a lawyer or you're an engineer, or there's quite a sort of set pattern. So it was quite a struggle for me to be able to do journalism, and I just worked really hard at it. I got sort of really good internships, and to cut a very long story short, eventually I sort of, I went to university and I did a postgrad in journalism. And yeah, there was a definite point. I started in features journalism, and there was a point, features and music actually, and there was a point where I really realized it was beauty that I loved. And I'd always loved beauty. But I didn't know you could be a beauty journalist, because, who knew that was a thing. So once I saw that I could do that, I moved into beauty, and then worked my way up from an assistant. So yeah, I've worked on lots of different magazines. I started on Stylist magazine when that had sort of been going for about 6 months. I went to Women's Health, I went to Marie Claire, went back to Stylist, went to Glamour for a little bit, and yeah, been freelance pretty much ever since.
I mean, it does sound pretty fabulous, to be honest. And I'm sure there are lots of fabulous and shiny and glamorous parts to it, but there's another side to it, isn't there? And so that's what you're talking about now, and that's what the book is about.
Yeah, definitely. There are lots of amazing people. There's lots, like, I've had some amazing experiences. There's a lot of amazing like artistry, I think, and particularly in the beauty industry, and entrepreneurial sort of spirit, which is also great. But there's definitely a dark side as well. There is a definite dark side on women's magazines, which I've written a little bit about in the book. But yeah, definitely in the sort of the beauty side of things too. Yeah,
and when did it change for you, or did it change? Was there one day when you just thought, I'm not, or have you always felt that there's been a side to the industry that maybe isn't something that's in alignment with your values, or in alignment with what you feel like you want to be part of?
Yeah, I think I've always felt that, but it was very much my driving force. So I guess I've sort of made my name in sort of women's and fashion magazine industry from sort of going against the grain and pushing for inclusivity. And I sort of always saw that there was another way that things could be. And I think it's probably as I've gotten older, I've sort of, it's definitely been a journey. But yeah, my thing was always that I know this can be better than it is, and I know this can represent more people. So that's always been, I guess, the thing I wanted to achieve in any way that I could.
Yeah, and being inside is a good way to make change happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was the best way that I could do that, as well as sort of in, writing about what I love.
Yeah, because you are keen to say that as well. You do love beauty, and you love the idea of it, and like you say, the artistry and the creativity. But So Ugly giving us back our beauty standards. That really is is like a historical look, isn't it, as well? A lot of history is in there about looking at what are beauty standards, where do they come from, and why they are upheld. So would you say most beauty standards are something that we should be investigating?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one of the starting points of the book was that we just, we don't know where beauty standards come from, really. We're not ever really taught or told, or, we exist in them. They're very much a part of our lives, but we don't know where they come from, and we just assume them as fact. And I think for me, I wanted to understand why that was the case and where these standards had come from. And once I started to read more and more about it, and this was before I'd even, realized this was a book, I started to just sort of see that there were really interesting patterns, and that there was much, much more behind beauty standards than we thought. And I just thought, oh my God, if people knew this, because it was really shocking to me. And I was like, oh my God, if I'm shocked by this, I'm sure other people will be shocked by this. So I think for me, it just had the impact of going, wow, this is not true. This is not fact. So if this is not a fact, there is a possibility that I can reject this and live a happier life where I don't look in the mirror and hate, what I see, or, starve myself every day, or whatever it happens to be, So that was a real starting point for me, definitely.
Yeah. And so when we talk about beauty standards, they're just so subjective, aren't they? Like, but there is this kind of beauty standard, not subjective. Beauty is subjective. The beauty standards seem to be quite a blanket approach that no one looks like, or that no one lives up to. So what would be an example of a beauty standard that you feel like most of us are trying to live up to, or most of us feel like is given as a standard?
I mean, there's so many, but I think one that's particularly topical is just trying to look young, trying to look as young as possible, and our beauty being very wrapped into our youth, I think is really, it's really toxic, and it's really tough. I guess for me, I'm sort of in my late 30s now, and I'm starting to see my skin change, and things are changing. And even as someone who knows a lot about this stuff, and who has obviously written this book, I still find those changes quite hard to deal with. And I know for me, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life feeling like this, feeling like as every year goes on, that I my worth diminishes. And I think that was probably one of the hardest chapters to write, actually, because I'm sort of like starting to live it a little bit. And I think, once I started to unpick everything in that chapter, and there's some really interesting points in there about where that ageism comes from, because it's so aimed at women, and obviously it does affect lots of different people, but it is historically very aimed at women. And once I sort of looked into that, I was like, wow, oh my God, this is actually way worse than I thought this was. This is like literally, this is patriarchal control, and it's so awful. And I think it's something a lot of people can relate to, that feeling of getting older and then having to sort of freeze time. And there's been so much topical discussion about that in the papers and in the media with Madonna, for example. I just think it is, that was one of the most crucial chapters, I think, for me.
Yeah, and that's going to happen to all of us, isn't it? And like you say, if we're fighting it, we're going to fight it every day for the rest of our lives. So accepting aging should just be something natural. We covered a book recently, and it was about wise words for women. It was for International Women's Day, and the author calls all women elders in training, and kind of reframed it as this as growing old is this amazing thing. And it's just like, that's how it used to be, right? So when and where did this idea that young is beautiful come in?
Yeah, it's interesting. So particularly in Europe, it started to happen. I think it was sort of like the late medieval period, when witch hunts started to spread throughout Europe. And very often a witch, or someone who was seen as a witch, was the kind of like these sort of like the wise woman of the sort of community, or quite often they were midwives, or they sort of slightly sat on the fringe of where they were a little bit older, so they were out of the sort of control and use of men, but they were the person that everyone used to go to traditionally. So quite often they were healers. So in the sort of late, I think sort of like 1500s-ish, I don't know if I've got that exactly right, but when the witch hunt started, that sort of, that they were some of the people who were targeted, and they were quite often the people that were targeted as being witches. And I think that is really fascinating, because after that we see language like crones and hags, and like, you know, there is a real shift towards there being a fear around older women. And in the literature of the time, the way they're depicted is often very visual, so it's very much like haggard. There's lots of references to their breasts as well, which is interesting, because it makes them seem like just like they're not appealing, and they're not sexual, and etc. And that is a real turning point. And it's once you start to look into it, you're just like, oh my god, this is wild that this legacy now still endures, and we haven't been able to reclaim that space or that power for older women, you know. And we see that everywhere, from, you know, like Hollywood. The age gap thing in Hollywood is wild, and you know, we see like it happens on our TVs. It's literally everywhere. So yeah, that was the turning point.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and you're right. Well, I bet once you kind of like start seeing it, you can't unsee it, right? It is everywhere. But it's stuff that we just take for granted. Like, we joke about Leonardo DiCaprio going out with like 19-year-old girls or whatever, but it's just like, it's pretty strange, really, isn't it? And that sounds to me, it's a bit like the women who aren't, like you say, aren't useful anymore as like as child bearers, or aren't sexual. It's like they've got wisdom, they've got knowledge, so they were persecuted, and then this became then the derogatory language, the derogatory illustrations. Also quite a lot to do with capitalism, racism, like classism, you talk about in the book. So really like huge structures that are kind of like, and it all makes sense. Especially like capitalism to me makes sense a lot. It's like the idea that let's just get people to keep buying stuff to make them because you want to look a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there are different periods over time where you really see. So I did a lot of analysis of adverts of lots of different periods, and you definitely see there are certain periods in time where the sort of beauty advertising is just so awful. Eases back a bit, and then it's awful again, and it sort of ebbs and flows with progression in female empowerment. So there's a point in, I think it's in the sort of 60s-ish, or late 50s, 60s, when the contraceptive pill becomes available for the first time. And once, it's so fascinating that, you know, as women start to get control over their reproductive rights, then all this beauty advertising sort of it becomes quite toxic, and it's sort of almost trying to keep them trapped in another way. And there were and it happened in the 80s as well, really fascinatingly. When I've watched a lot of 80s sort of adverts on YouTube, which has been really really fun. But there's a real shift to it being about, you know, that word you said earlier, the battle with aging, and like it's this sort of like it's almost like sort of war speak around aging, that it's something we have to fight. That's another word that's used a lot. And that's really interesting, because, you know, that was a period when women were sort of coming in on a more equal ground into the workplace. And all of a sudden, you know, the sort of male run ad agencies, and, you know, sort of creating these adverts that are so just so toxic, and so very much like, you know, you have to look great and you have to look amazing, and this is a fight against aging, and this and that, and this, you know, there's different elements that play into that. But it becomes very, the diet industry comes in at that point as well, very heavily, and it just becomes very much like you have to be as small as possible, and you have to look as good as possible, because you're still under control of the male gaze. And it's wild when you look at it.
And is that look the kind of it's the look from the male gaze, the ideal, the perfect vision? Is that the kind of like big boobs, small waist, blonde hair? Is that what that kind of like stereotype that I'm talking about? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. That was very much the sort of the narrative of what beautiful was. Definitely. And it still endures.
And it seems to be getting younger, doesn't it? Like like kind of like looking as good as possible for as long as possible, but it's like aimed at younger and younger people. So before we went live, Steph was talking about kind of teenagers and how this is affecting teenagers. Is that something that you've looked at?
I haven't necessarily looked at it in the book as such. I do have a chapter on childhood, which looks at how we discover these beauty standards in the first place, because that's fascinating. because I do sort of think, to a certain extent, we do think that, you know, children don't notice these things, but there is evidence to say that children have a fully formed sense of self-esteem by the age of 5, which is really terrifying. That's comparable to an adult as well, that sense of self-esteem. So yeah, we do pick those things up very, very early, and I sort of chart in that chapter basically what happens at each stage, and, you know, how we're feeling. And like my own story is woven into that, because I very much, there's a picture of me sat with all my Barbie dolls, and they're all like, when you look at that picture, I'm like, oh my God, no wonder I hated the way I looked, because I'm sat with all these little tiny waisted, big boob, blonde, white dolls, you know, that just couldn't even vaguely look like me, even if I tried it. And it's no wonder that that's such a big issue. And, you know, that combined with what you see on TV and blah, 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 like it all chips away at yourself, because you don't look like that. So yeah, I do have a chapter on that.
Yeah, and that lack of representation. And I've heard you talk about this, that the idea of feeling other and feeling other quite young, and then that kind of taking that with you through life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely, one of the stories I've sort of spoken about quite a lot was just being at a party. I think I was 4, and it was a princess party, and I was really excited. And when I got to the party, there was a line of there was like a rail of princess outfits, and I was really excited because everyone got to dress up like a princess, you know, for the afternoon. And I got to the front of the queue, and the lady who was giving out the outfits sort of turned to me and was like, she was like, "You're too big for it." And yeah, it's weird to look back at that, because I have an actual picture of me in this outfit. She gave me a butterfly outfit instead, and I was really miserable. I look quite miserable in this picture as well. But yeah, it's really interesting, because every time I look at that picture, I feel that same feeling that I felt then. And I think so many of us have those experiences where we are made to feel other in some way. And, you know, and that could be so many different ways. And it does stay with you. And it's so hard to shake it. It's so hard. And yeah, I think, yeah, as I said, I think so many people have a moment like that.
Yeah, I think so many people can relate probably on this call, because it's hard when it's being then reinforced by everything else you're seeing or not seeing, like you're talking about, not being represented at all. And then there in the book as well, I think this is how this whole project kind of started, was the story, if you don't mind sharing the story about the messages on your on the article that you wrote when you were a beauty editor, and when you were working and kind of writing online and in the magazine.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to write a column, and I used to write it alongside 2 of my other colleagues. We're all on the beauty team, and they were, I guess, conventionally attractive. It's so weird to say that, because, you know, I don't believe in that as a statement, but, you know, like in the wider society, they were conventionally attractive, white, etc., you know. And they every week this column would go up online, and there was a comments bit where people would say stuff, and someone wrote, "Anita Bhagwandas is really ugly" on this as a comment. And I saw it, and it just, I mean, yeah, I can feel the pain of it still. It was so searing, because it was somebody saying something that I felt about myself. And even though I was like, you know, I was sort of like mid-level at this point, you know, I'd worked really hard. I was on a, you know, loads of, like, life was good, but still this comment.
What age were you?
I think I was about 27.
Okay.
Maybe yeah, 27, 28. And yeah, just the feeling of that word ugly. It was like someone had outed me. I felt like, you know, here I was, like in a big magazine writing something, and I felt like someone had just like pulled the rug out from underneath me, and it was like, oh no, someone has seen me for who I am. And it was how I'd felt my entire life, you know, since, you know, that moment I talked about when I was 4, of having that first seed of ugliness planted in my mind. And I think that's why it hurt so much. And the fact that somebody would write that, and we all know that trolls are, you know, they've maybe got something going on in their lives to make them behave that way. But just that comment, I was like, you've not said that about anyone else, you've picked me to say that about. And yeah, it definitely really hurt.
And like you say, it's a stranger on the internet, and I'm sure you probably don't care what lots of strangers on the internet say, but when it's something that it feels like it's validating a thought you've got about yourself, then that's when it's, and language is just so powerful, isn't it? And that word is so powerful. Like I think that about the book every time I see it, and I see you standing there holding it, and I just think it must be, this whole process must have been like writing the book is one thing, but then promoting it and talking about these stories again and again, that must be hard for you.
Yeah, it is as well. And the funny thing is, I didn't really realize this until, you know, like when the book came out, actually. But, you know, people are going to be Googling like Anita Bhagwandas ugly now, which is, so I've almost like, it's quite funny that I've done that to myself. But
you've taken back the power now because it's the title of your book, and that will just be going up and up the chart.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think I've definitely come away with that, and I hope everyone comes away with that who reads it. But it doesn't have that power over me anymore because I know it doesn't exist. I know that word doesn't exist, just in the way that beautiful doesn't exist, because it's so subjective. And the standards that we've come to assume by those, you know, from those words have a really complex and quite awful history. And so, I don't agree with those words.
Brilliant.
So
well, that must be so freeing.
Yeah, it's really freeing. And you know, that's not to say that I am cured. I am not fixed. I still have days where, you know, I struggle with things. Absolutely. And I'm really honest about that, because what I didn't want was, I really love body positivity, and I talk about it in the book. I think it's amazing. And there have definitely been, it's definitely helped me, and it's definitely helped the industry, you know, the sort of fashion and beauty industries become more, you know, inclusive. But it's like all or nothing. It feels very all or nothing. It feels like to be body positive. And, you know, when you see all those amazing, you know, bloggers, etc., it can be so far away from your reality when you've spent your entire life hating the way you look, or being told that the way you look isn't good enough and not right. Then be like, I love myself, you know, every time you look in the mirror. I just don't think it's realistic for everyone. If you can do that, awesome, love that. But I just don't think it works for everyone, and it didn't work for me like that either. So I think one of the things to talk about is the idea of body neutrality, where it's like somewhere in the middle, where you look in the mirror, maybe you're not like high five, I look amazing, but it's I'm okay with it, and I can see some positives. I can, you know, it's much more neutral and it's less charged. So yeah, I think that's a good place to be in. Totally.
Would you have a word or a phrase that describes how you feel about yourself currently?
I mean, yeah, it definitely it really ebbs and flows, but I think okay is probably a word. Okay. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I mean, that's good. It's a good thing to aim for, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's quite neutral. It's quite neutral.
Yeah, especially when you're in this whirlwind moment.
Yes.
And how has the response been? So I've seen that you've been doing some events with kind of readers and things like that, but I'm really interested in how has the response been in the industry? Have you had good backing from colleagues and peers?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, it's, with a book like this, I think anyone who goes against the grain a bit is gonna, I don't know, not have, might have some backlash, or might, you know, it's a scary thing to do that. It's definitely not easy. I definitely have moments where I was like, am I blowing up my entire career? But I think for me, it's also laid out in fact, really, that all of these things, I was like, all of this is fact. I've gotten all of these from history books. I've gotten them from research papers. You know, I've watched hundreds of hours worth of things like documentaries, etc. I mean, you can argue about anything, but I'm like, this is like literally fact. And I think if there were any brands who said to me, I don't like that, I would just think, you don't put your money where your mouth is. I think if you are a brand who says that you love, you know, says that you're pro inclusivity, says that you're, you know, etc., and everything that encompasses, you should be on board with everything I'm saying in the book, because it is literally fact. You know, these things are things that have happened. So that was my barometer. I was like, cool, if a brand says something to me, or they're like, we can't work with you, I'm sorry, or whatever it is, I'm like, cool, okay, so you obviously you don't believe in this, you're
rejecting, you're rejecting that, because it's a journalistic piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a journalistic piece, really, isn't it? With your story interwoven into it. So that's what makes it so fascinating. And like you said, talking about the patterns that just keep repeating. So we're talking about like this kind of systemic change, really, is what's needed. And I think you're really good at sharing. You talk about the systemic issues, and you also talk about things we can do personally to kind of protect ourselves and to move the needle, to start moving that needle. Can you share any advice for us on either of those? Either the let's change the system, change the world, and or let's just change how we talk to ourselves in the mirror.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, I think the most important, well, obviously the wider, aspects are important, but I wrote the book so that people could like feel better about themselves, and that they could almost it's almost like a better quality of life, just to have a better quality of life going forward, because I wanted that for myself. So there are some little sort of tips in there that have worked for me, of just things, they're either research based or they're things that I've tried and I think work. So I think one of the things that is really helpful is it's almost to watch the mess. So this is actually quite hard to do, but I think if you can start to pay attention to the messages that you sort of tell yourself when you use, well, basically when you use any kind of beauty product. So for example, if you're looking in the mirror in the morning and you are putting on, I don't know, like your serum, you're putting on some moisturizer, etc. It's so slight, and they're hard to pick up, but it's almost like what you're saying to yourself. It's like this soundtrack that goes through your mind that's like, oh, that doesn't look very good, this isn't great, I need more of this, and there's this line here, or whatever it is. I think it's quite noticeable when we put makeup on. So that's one of the things I say is so when you're putting on makeup on, it's just to watch what you're doing. So are you covering everything up? Is the point of you putting your makeup on, are you like, oh no, I have to cover that up, I have to cover that up, I have to cover that up?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I look knackered.
Yeah,
let's try and do.
All of that. That becomes, as soon as we like take out our makeup bag, that becomes what we're saying to ourselves. And if you think about that, and how many times we do that, if it's every day of the week, it's wild. So what I do say is, first of all, notice those things, which is really hard. It's really hard, especially if you're busy, really hard. And then the second thing is to try and turn the switch on that. And so instead of focusing on those things, it's switching it around to be like, okay, I kind of, instead of it being about me trying to cover everything up or look as young as possible, try and look some other way,
or fix it,
or to fix something, is to go, okay, is there something more empowering I can do here? So it's switching that mindset to be a bit more about celebration and self-expression. And I think that's a much more joyful way to use makeup, actually, and hair care as well, whatever happens to be. I think in makeup in particular, though, it's wearing like a bright red lipstick, or it's trying a glittery eyeshadow, or whatever it happens to be, that just makes you feel great and is fun and is creative. And one of the things I say in the book is that I think quite often when we do get to this place where we're like, oh, I don't like the way I look, and you start to think, oh, I look really old and like this, and like I think that is a particular thing that we do think. We look in the mirror and we say, I look tired and I look old. Number one, we might just be really, really tired, because women, everyone takes on a lot, so I don't want to gender it too much, but I do think in particular women take on quite a lot and have a lot going on. But number two, it's just that I can't remember my point now. I'm so sorry. I should probably say I've got ADHD, so I lose my track very often.
No, don't worry. Just talking about things, but like the way you talk to yourself and kind of reframing it. So instead of oh God, I look old, or I'm knackered and that I need to do something just to like miracle cure. It's about celebrating creativity and
So that's so the one thing is that you might actually just be tired. The second thing is, I think quite often it's that we feel a disconnect to how we maybe felt when we were younger, and you can use, I think, fashion and beauty to reconnect to that, and it does flip the switch on things. So I don't know, maybe it is that, so the example I sort of use in the book is that, I don't know, maybe you were, I don't know, a goth when you were younger or something, and it might.
Any goths here? Admit it in the chat box. Revisit it.
Very tattooed. But yeah, just that, you know, it might be
Try to
re-tapping
be.
back into that. Maybe you've lost that part of your life a little bit, and it's about switching back into that, listening to some music again, changing up your makeup a little bit to be a bit more how it used to be. So, you know, I think we can use it to almost harness what we really want to feel and what we're actually missing in some ways. So it's
Yeah.
self-expression.
Yeah, definitely. And this is so good, because in the club we often talk about we all need to have more fun and play, because we know that, like scientifically, we know we all need to do that, and what a great way to do it if you're into makeup and kind of beauty and stuff. And also we talk about how we talk to ourselves, but I've never thought about it as in from when you're actually actively doing that, which is probably, like you say, we do it all the time. I've just been away for a weekend, and it was for a fitness holiday, and it was like a launch, and there was a TV presenter there who's pretty famous, and we all had to do like a reframe exercise, and it was like something you say a lot which isn't serving you, and hers was, oh, you just look so old. Like looking in the look, and she's she's gorgeous, and anyone that like would look at her would just be like, yeah, but you're a gorgeous version of whatever age you are. So she reframed it as in, I just look my age, and it's like, and that's okay. And she said she's not going to move to LA because she feels so bad about herself when she's there, just because the people that she's surrounded by are so obsessed with looking young and looking a certain way. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like, kind of curating the people you're surrounding yourself with, whether that's physically or whether that is online, and what you're looking at. If you're looking at pictures of Kardashians all the time, then you must be, like, I'm sure you've done research on this, like you are going to be comparing yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think, yeah, one of the things I say all the time, one of the best things that you can do for your sense of self-esteem, your mental health, your self-worth, is to really curate your feed, to almost like just to bolster you rather than to take away from you. There was a definite point where I was following lots of models and like celebrities and stuff for work, and then I felt I could feel how bad I was feeling from it, because every time I looked at it, I was like, what, we're the same age, why don't I look like that? Why does she look like that and I don't? And I switched all of that, and I followed all of them, and I started to follow people who were I guess for me it was sort of quite a size related thing. I've always been plus size, and I was really struggling with it at this point. I think I must have been about 30, and I started to follow loads of body positivity influencers. I made a sort of rule to follow people who are my size or bigger, and then when you do that, you start to normalize the thing that you think you're abnormal for. And you also, obviously, it's great to see those people being empowered and being like, oh my God, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And I think our brain just sort of sees those things, and it's almost like it gives us permission to feel okay. So I think that's one of the best things you can do. It's almost to just flood your feed with the thing that you're struggling with. And, that might be, this has been very popular on my Instagram, but I've got a highlight that is just like really cool, older women who are doing their own thing, and they look amazing. They've got really cool style, and, they're all kinds of different people. And yeah, it is just flooding your feed with those people. And I've done that as well, because I want to be inspired by them, and I am inspired by those people, but in the moment you forget. And I guess the other thing is that when we are scrolling, it's interesting because we're in a state that's not dissimilar to hypnosis. The alpha brainwaves we're in, it's almost like hypnosis. So even though we just think we're mindlessly scrolling, sat on the loo, we all do it, sat on the loo scrolling, we are taking those things in. And I think that's really crucial to know, that we are taking those things in. So you've got to take ownership of your own feed, and just don't follow anyone who makes you feel bad, or just hide them or mute them if they're a friend or a family member.
Yeah, totally. Because you can control that. And you talk a lot about advertising, and we all know that advertising isn't good for us, and they're trying to sell us stuff that we don't need, and so that we don't have so much control over, because it is everywhere. But our pockets of control, we can be responsible for making it our own space and looking how we want it to. That's such good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the advertising thing, I think it's about just giving yourself a bit of breathing space. So, one of the things I talk about in the book is to just give yourself, a month. If there's something that you're like, I think we can really attach our hope onto beauty products in a way that is not, they might, there are some great beauty products out there. There's some great skincare, but I think I think it can be where it's really dangerous. And I think where we get hooked into just buying and buying and buying and buying, or sort of anxiety, beauty anxiety, I call it, is I guess when we think something is gonna, I don't know, completely change our face and it's gonna change how we feel about ourselves. And this could be anything. It could be a diet. It could be literally anything. It could be injectables. It could be whatever it happens to be. It's just to give yourself some breathing space. Is to just go, do you know what? If I want that in a month, we'll come back to it. But maybe there's, maybe I'll go away and I'll change my feed and see how that feels. Maybe I will like just have a little bit of a think about, where this is coming from. Is there something else that's not right? I do think quite often we do focus in on the way we look when something else in our lives is not right. So, are we happy at work? Is our relationship okay? Do we need to spend more time with people? Are we lonely? It's easy to just go, oh, if I fix this one thing about the way I look, everything else is going to change. And it doesn't. And this is why people get addicted to cosmetic surgery, because they're like, it's going to change. And next time it's going to change. And it doesn't. So that's another thing I think is quite helpful.
Let's talk a little bit about cosmetic surgery then, because you do dedicate quite a bit of space to that, because that as an industry it's just going wild, isn't it? Like the stats are up and up and up. And is that because it's an industry that it obviously feeds on insecurity, and like you say, you're trying to fix something that won't be fixed with new lips or new cheeks or new boobs or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a bit more like, it's more like the Wild West than people think it is, actually. Cosmetic cosmetic sort of surgery industry, and within that I sort of include like injectables as well. That whole industry it's just so wild. I mean, there's lots of different things I cover in the book about it, but I think in particular it's just that focus on upselling people I find really, really hard. And this has happened to me, this happened to me last year when I was at like a really prestigious clinic. I sort of was like, no, I don't want anything. And this surgeon almost like took it as like a challenge to like make me have something. Started to point out all the things on my face that could use something. He was like, yeah, your profile's not, if I did this, your profile would be better. If I did this, I was just like, I didn't ask you for any of this. And that is not the first time that's happened to me. And I just thought, oh my God, if this is happening to me, this is happening to loads of women who, don't necessarily have, who have gone there for a reason potentially, but then are being sold loads of things they don't need, loads of things they don't want, being made to feel worse about themselves. And it's funny because when he said that to me, I came out and I kept looking at my profile in the mirror and I was like, wow, this is wild. So, that's the effect of that. But we all, Instagram and these social media is flooded with these before and after pictures as well, which has a similar effect. So yeah, that's just one part of the cosmetic surgery industry. I'm not against it. I'm not against having cosmetic surgery. I'm not against tweakments, etc., injectables. I might still have those things in the future. I've definitely not, I'm not putting anything off the table. And I want to like acknowledge that it's really hard as well. It's really hard to, to change and or to not, we are in a society that is very looks based. It's really hard. So I think, I guess one of the things is I've sort of almost created my own questionnaire of things to think about in the book before you go and have those procedures. And they're not made, it's not there to make anyone feel bad. It's literally just go, have you thought about this? Have you thought about, I think one of the things I find quite hard with injectables in particular is that they are just sort of, they're sort of seen as like, even the word tweakment makes it sound like it's like buying a new lipstick or, something like that. It's made to seem really casual, Botox is still, it's fine, the way it's used, but that is a poison, that it's one of the most dangerous ingredients in the entire world. Like when you read about the history of Botox, it's terrifying. But I think what is the way that we're sort of said, we're told about it. We're not told that actually once we have it, we're probably going to have this every year for the rest of our lives, maybe. So it's like thinking about that cost, because there might be something else you want to do with that money. So that's we are, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to have it done properly, and etc. So I think that's one of the things I cover is like think about the cost of how much this is going to be, plus inflation, blah blah blah. But then
the maintenance ongoing, isn't it? Forever.
And it's also the other costs as well. And so the example I gave earlier where I was following all the Instagram models, so I was about 30 and I started to feel so awful about myself that I went and had was a real spur of the moment decision. I went and had loads of filler in my face, and it's all gone now because filler does mostly dissolve. Sometimes it doesn't though, so actually it can stay in your face for a
filler
very
here?
long time. Sorry?
Is it here? Just so that would it be here? Is that where you have filler? I don't know.
So you can have it in lots of different places. So I think I had a little bit in my lips and I had a bit under here, because previously a cosmetic surgeon had said to me, oh yeah, I can see that you're hollowing out a little bit under there. I didn't have an issue with it. I didn't even notice it before. I had no issue with it. This is one of the hazards of my industry. But you know, like, so I went and had that done, and you know, tear trough filler can be risky if it's not done properly. I did have it done by a friend who's a doctor, but it can be really risky if it's done poorly. You know, it can lead to really awful complications. And also the thing that people don't prepare you for is how you feel about your face when it wears off. This is why I'm like really pro people waiting as long as they possibly can. You know, we don't need it. Nobody needs it. This is not a part of womanhood, or, you know, or peoplehood really. You know, it's not a part of life that we need to, we don't have to buy into it. But, you know, I do think that when it disappears, it's like you hate your face even more than you even possibly thought was imaginable before, because you almost see, it's almost like your old face like creeps back in, and you're like, wow, okay. And it's sort of this weird dysmorphia.
It's like a before and after, right? It's of yourself, isn't it? Right. And that's there. And and
it's very hard to deal with. And I
can imagine
told about it enough.
No, and you're right, the word tweakment just seems so kind of like, just kind of belittles almost what it is. Like you say, it is these are procedures, and it is being done, it should be done by doctors. So it's a bigger deal than maybe I always see it, like I see it on the Daily Mail. There's like all the beauty writers are always talking about everything they've had done or not done, and it does seem just really like you could just kind of go and get it done after the Tesco shop.
Yeah, and there's downtime for a lot of these things as well. And I'm really against, you know, any kind of like writing that doesn't caveat and say you don't need. Well, I think so often it's like you can have this amazing thing, but there is no option given to not have that, or I just think we need to see some other ways, or we just need to have a bit of reality around these things. And just, you know, I think the thing is, we're probably not going to have that from our social media or from what we see on TV, because everyone's trying to keep up appearances. But that's why I think we need to take control of it for ourselves and get the knowledge and just, you know, almost create our own pathway to, you know, getting older with the way we look.
Yeah, definitely. I think lockdown that's why so many of us love lockdown, for that reason, maybe for that reason only, is that like we didn't need to worry too much about what we looked like. It was like everyone was like, less makeup, you couldn't get your hair done, all the kind of stuff that we thought we couldn't live without, we did live without, and it was actually a nice feeling. Yeah,
there was also the Zoom, there was a boom in cosmetic surgery from Zoom though, because
was there?
Yeah,
really,
you know, we're not meant to, you know, as humans, we're not meant to be staring at ourselves all day long, and that is now what we do.
Sure,
in our like mirrors and selfies, and you know, the pressure to look good, and you know, obviously then during the pandemic, everyone being on Zoom, you know, like I do it all the time. Like I'm trying to like obviously talk to the person I'm talking to, but you know, I'm always looking at the way I'm like what I look like.
Yeah, you're right there, which is not a normal conversation when you can see yourself.
It's not normal. And you know, that's why there was such a big boom in cosmetic surgery over, as soon as we could have it, everyone was going out and having things because of that.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that, but yeah, it makes sense. Emma does want to know what's your skincare secret though. Now we know it's not fillers.
My skincare secret, I don't know, it might
happiness.
It might be, I don't know, it might be genes a little bit, I have to say.
Sorry, Emma, it's jeans. You can't,
I know,
can't go and get that.
That's a really annoying I want to give you a product, but it probably is that, because I partied very hard in my 20s. Like I shouldn't have.
You don't deserve that skin.
Still partying hard, I'm not gonna lie, but I shouldn't. Partied very hard. So
maybe it's the makeup. Maybe we need makeup tips from you then. So maybe how do we hide the party?
Yeah, it probably is more that, to be honest.
What do you hope the biggest takeaway for readers will be from this book then? Like you said earlier, it's a kind of to make yourself, you wrote it because you want something to help people feel better about themselves.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I want people to take away. Like for me, even if it shifts the dial on how people feel even just a little bit, then that's great. It might not work for everyone, and that's fine. But I think there will probably be something in there that everyone would take away for themselves that would help them go, oh, okay, I feel a bit better about that. But then the second thing is that sense of injustice and anger that you get. And so many people have said this to me after reading the book, which is how I felt after I'd finished it and I'd done all the research. I was like, I feel so angry because for want of a better phrase, we've all been mugged off, to use a very, very London phrase, to have been kept feeling small and rubbish about the way we look. Like, I have so much sadness and regret for, just the entire, I don't know, of like my my entire life, just not feeling like I was pretty enough or skinny enough, or all of these different things. Like, nothing about me was okay and right and acceptable. And I just think, God, that's so much time wasted. And I think for me, I just didn't want to spend any more time feeling like that. And I think there's probably a lot of people who probably feel like that too. So there is a sense of anger and like grief as well, I think, probably as well, like of that lost time and how unfair that is. And when you read about, I do talk about this in the book, the sort of systems of oppression that, from patriarchy to, colonization and racism and, all these different things, and classism, all of these things. When you look at that, it's just really sad. And I think that's why we need to take ownership of it for ourselves, feel that anger and let that sort of almost just be like a giant screw you. I'm going to make my own beauty rules. And I think that's the thing I end on. It's just very much talking about how we sort of need to create our own sort of beauty doctrine for ourselves that, is personal to us and is our blueprint for how we are going to approach beauty. I think particularly as you get older, like what are you going to, how do I want to feel? And how do I want to do this? And maybe that is that you just want to have loads of injectables, you want to have loads of surgery, and that is totally fine. But I just think there are other options and we don't get shown those options.
Yeah. And I like the idea of just like the ask yourself the questions of why you're doing certain things, give yourself the pause between doing that. This is all like, it's such super sensible advice, but it's like we just don't do it. And it is there. And also like voting with our wallets is a big power that we have, right, as women. Are there brands that you do, because we talk a lot about kind of greenwashing, so sustainability, and that's kind of people as well as the planet. Are there brands that you would recommend, that you do like, that you work with a lot?
Yeah, they definitely are. I guess one thing to say before that is that one of the things I talk about in the book is this idea of slow beauty, where again, it is flipping the script on how we use beauty products. And I think this is one of the ways that we can, still enjoy beauty of all different kinds and, enjoy like the process and the rituals of beauty, which are really ancient. People have been doing this for a very long time. But it is almost just coming at it from a place of slowness. So that is not over consuming and not overbuying, finishing products, that thing, because they do have a shelf life as well. It's such a waste of money when I see people with like tons of creams all piled up. I'm like, oh, these are all going to go off. They've all got actives in, so checking things, particularly if they are, sort of natural skincare or, like that's they quite often have a very short shelf life and you need to use those things in like 3 to 6 months.
Oh, right. Okay.
And because all of those.
How many people here check their shelf-life dates of their lipstick? I bet most of us have got lipsticks. Oh, David does. Good.
Some things you can get away with. So like powder formulations in makeup, probably shouldn't say this, but like I'm pretty realistic about stuff. Like powder things you can get away with, but anything that's cream has got the potential to go off and you can usually smell it. But particularly it's quite bad for it. But it's so then when you do come to buy things again, it's buying things that you really enjoy. So, and that might be, there's loads of different reasons you might enjoy it, and it's taking the focus away from it being like the anti-aging moisturizer that's going to fight, all the signs of aging or whatever, it happens to say on it. It might just be that you really like the packaging, and that is cool. I am totally fine with that because I love beautiful things. And for me, actually, the packaging makes a really big difference. And it, the way it looks makes me really happy. So that's cool. If that's you too, amazing. But it might be the way it smells. It might be the way a certain lipstick smells. There's like a brand that I love because I love the smell of these lipsticks, and it's just bringing that joy and like the sensorial like pleasure element back into it, rather than it being like, hiding this and, all of that. So I think that's one cool thing to do. But brands, in terms of brands, the brand I just mentioned with the lipsticks, I love the smell of. All of their makeup smells like herbs. It's quite niche. It's called Rituel de Fille. and it's an American brand, and it's run by these 3 sort of makeup artist sisters, and it's almost like it's all based around magic and like alchemy. So it's, yeah, all the shades are almost
I love
like,
the sound of that.
it's very like ethereal. It's really beautiful, and I love everything I've tried by them. So that's a favorite. I mean, there's so many. I do think,
Let me just ask if anybody's got any, because it's 5 to now. I just realised the time is 5 to 8.
yeah.
If anyone's got any questions, put them in the chat, and then maybe you could just talk us through your morning and or evening routine. What happened? Like, what does a beauty editor do before bed to their face? Probably not the same as the rest of us.
What do I do? Yeah, so yeah, I take my makeup off and I do double cleanse. So I use an oil, but I'm always looking for a shortcut. So I do, like, I will take my makeup off with an oil cleanser that turns into like a milky formula, because it all just comes off in one. And I use these amazing face halo pads. I think a lot of them have them these days, but you know, they're like the pads that just, they're microfiber basically, so they take everything off for you, and it's just way easier. So I use them every night. The face halo black ones are really good because they just don't show up all the grime. I really like those. And then I will put some sort of moisturizing cream on before bed. Sometimes it's retinol. I use that a couple of times a week.
But it sounds like you're not kind of religiously using certain things. So you play with lots of things, don't you? That's part of your job.
Very easily distracted as well, having ADHD. So I'm like, oh, a new shiny thing. But I do
something shiny. I like the packaging.
I do have to say, I'm very like, I hate wasting products. I just like, so like my friends are very well stocked with the things
I bet
into once. I'm quite, it's quite low key. I try to, as I said, particularly before bedtime, I try to use things that, I don't know, kind of help me wind down a bit, or I like the smell of, or that just have a lovely sensorial aspect. And it's all about how it feels on my skin. And
I love the word you used the word ritual before, and so it's so nice to like the idea of ritual and that just makes it feel kind of nourishing and something nice for yourself, versus, like you say, the kind of like battling and fighting and fixing and all that kind of stuff. So it's so interesting that like the language has been a real that's been such a great learning this night. Thank you for that, and thanks for all that advice. It's brilliant. So it's like it's kind of getting angry at the injustice and the kind of systemic stuff, and making the right choices around that, and then for ourselves, like asking ourselves why we're doing things, and why it matters so much, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, guys. One question: should you always take your makeup off, wash your face at night? I think we know the answer to that. Yes. Well, that's what I'm saying. Anita B, what would you say?
I would say, I mean, you should, but if you don't, every now and then, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. I like it. Very easygoing beauty editor. And finally, final question. In the book, do you look at different cultural ideals of beauty?
I do touch on different cultural ideas. It's interesting because historically a lot has come from Europe because of colonization, so there are a lot of the influence of that is very wide. But I do look at different places. For example, there is a there's much of a less, I don't know, almost negative aspect to aging in India, which is quite interesting, which I've seen in my culture, and that people aren't anywhere near as obsessed with it in the way that they are in sort of, Europe or America, etc. And part of that is because women are still sort of quite often the matriarch of the family, and there is still a lot of respect and power for older women in that way. The other one I look at is France, which is quite interesting because, and I know some sort of older French women as well who I've met through the beauty industry, and they've all said this too, and that you don't get less sexy as a woman as you get older in the way that you do, I think, in other places. So there's obviously still pressures to look a certain way, but I think in France there is, there's a lot of older French actresses who have beauty campaigns, like in the way that doesn't happen quite as often in, I don't know, even in like an American brand or etc. It doesn't happen quite as often, and they're still celebrating, they still get sexy roles. And so there is that idea that you almost grow in sexiness a little bit in France.
Sure. And that makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense. That's how it should be. I love it. Thank you so much, Anita. I'll let you go. It's 8 o'clock, so I appreciate that you spent the last hour with us talking us through the book. Steph has shared some links to buy and all that kind of stuff. So we'll anyone that wants to stay on, my guys, and I'll tell you about some kind of save the dates and stuff. But Anita, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Amazing. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone as well. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm
Bye.
sure they do. Take care. Bye.